everyone, it's John from What Up, and welcome back to another video. This will be my video explaining what happens at the end of episode 8 of season 1 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show. Now, there's a lot to unpack, so we're going to do it in two separate parts within the same video. First part, we'll talk about what happens with Rand and the Dark One, and I use quotations there, the Dark One, during his battle at the Eye of the World. Then we'll talk about the Seanchan afterwards, because they're both fairly important aspects at the end of this episode. So if you're new to the channel and you don't know what I do here, I cover Wheel of Time show news, so anything and everything to do with the Wheel of Time production, currently filming season 2 in Prague, that's what I do here. Everything from rumors, leaks, castings, pictures, videos, actual news, you name it, I cover it here in the channel. So if you like that sort of thing, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, because I put out a ton of Wheel of Time content. Now, because we are talking about the final episode in the first season, and it does have some, comparisons to the last battle in the very last book of the Wheel of Time, we have to give a spoiler warning. So, spoiler warning, in this video we're talking about the end of episode 8 of season 1 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show. So, if you haven't seen the first season, I'm ruining things from the entire first season of the show. So there's that. The second thing is to explain some of this stuff, we have to talk about things that happened during the last battle, which is in book 14 of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. So if you haven't read the entire series, well, be forewarned, I'm going to ruin parts of that chapter of the final book, just so you know. Alright, all of that being said, let's get on to the video. Alright, so the end of episode 8, we have Rand. We have a Ishamael, we have a Gwaine, we have a baby, we have a farmhouse, and we have the Eye of the World. There's a whole lot going on here, and we're going to stop and talk about a couple of different things. So, essentially what happens here is Rand goes to the Eye of the World with Moiraine, and he basically falls asleep. Now, it's not really explained what this is, but there is precedent for it in the books, and it's called a dream trap. Essentially, he is sprung a trap that sent him into Tel'aran'rhoid, the world of dreams. Now, while he's there, anything that happens is real. So, if he dies here, he dies in real life. If he decides to stay here and make this reality real, he's stuck there forever. So there's a bunch of different theories on what is happening here. Now, the theory that I like the most is this. During the last battle, Rand fights the Dark One, and during this battle, they remake the pattern a bunch of different ways. The Dark One is remaking the pattern, Rand the Dragon is remaking the pattern, because you find out at that point in Book 14, that's one of the abilities the dragon has. He's able to weave the pattern much like he weaves the One Power. Now, they go back and forth, and Rand, sees that he can weave something where it is a pure utopia. There is no darkness, there is no evil, there's nothing bad happening. But then he finally realizes that people aren't people. He's taken the choice of anything away from them, and he's just creating things that he wants. So I think they've done here, and this is the theory that I like the most, is they're starting that now. So they're talking about the power of the dragon to remake reality to what he wishes. Now, part of this is through Tel'aran'rhoid, part of this is through the real world, I guess you would say. Part of it is using the One Power, and there's even parts of it using the True Power, which is the power that comes directly from the Dark One. But essentially, I think this is a small seed or a small little tidbit to start prepping the audience now for what's going to happen in the series finale, because in the book series, we kind of understood what was going on, but it was a big shock and a blow and hard to digest at the time. So when you're reading it, people still to this day are fighting about things that happened during that final battle, and it's written on paper. So you can go back and you can read it, and you can reference things, but people are still arguing about what certain things meant. So I think what the show is doing is they're going to showcase it little by little throughout the entire series, showing that he has the power to change reality to what he wants. Now, the whole shtick here is that the Dark One, Ishamael, is telling him that he can remake this reality, be here forever, be with Egwene, live this way, and it essentially will remove him as a player from the game and allow Ishamael or the Dark One or anyone else to do what they want. This is pretty smart on Ishamael's part, because one of two things is going to happen. Either Rand's going to take the bait and he's going to be trapped in this dream world forever, made in his own image, how he wants it. He'll be happy or not, it depends. And he'll be out of the way for Ishamael to do what he wants. Or it'll make him angry, and he'll continue to fight Ishamael, which he does here, and we're going to showcase this right now. So he does choose to fight Ishamael. He wakes up out of Tel'aran'rhoid, out of the dream, and he uses the Satin Grail that Moiraine has given him to channel a massive amount of the One Power and basically destroy Ishamael. Now, in the show, we still kind of see him as the Dark One, because that's what they're saying he is. But this is a really cool-looking scene. He blasts him with the One Power here, but as he dies, I'm going to stop it right here, just as he's about to blast with one power, you see a couple of different things in the screen. And this is that, my first screen, the initial screen for the video. You see all of that power around Rand. A bunch of different strands of power, including tainted power. You see the sangreal glowing in his hand because he's drawing a ton of power and he's going to pulse it out through it, kind of using this as a focus, is my guess. But on the left there, you see Ishamael, who's still being called the Dark One. You see a bunch of black roots of power connected to the seal below him. So the second part of his plan is if this happened, if Rand was upset, didn't take the bait, and decided to try to destroy him anyway, he's destroying a reflection of Ishamael. Not really Ishamael, because Ishamael's trapped inside the seal. He's sealed in the Dark One's prison. He's sealed behind the boar. This is just a projection of him. Now, when Rand loses this much power on top of the seal, he cracks the seal, effectively releasing Ishamael and the other Forsaken forever. Now, in the book series, Ishamael was the one trapped, but not trapped. So he was sort of trapped, kind of trapped, but maybe not, so he could still affect the world in cycles. Every so many years, he would come out and he'd wreak havoc upon the world and do different things. We're going to see in the second part of the video when we talk about the Seanchan. He was part of the reason for Arthur Hawkwing's fall. He did all kinds of really terrible things when he was out and about in the world. So it's not a huge stretch to think that this is one of those cycles in the show where he's out, he's affecting the world just like he was in the books. He's drawing everyone there, so they will use the one power at the eye, think it's the last battle, think they're fighting the Dark One, and just break the seal. Crack the seal wide open because it's already flecked, cracked, old, and effectively free all of the Forsaken because they were trapped near the edge of the Dark One's prison, just like in the books, and then they're free to work their havoc in the world. So that's what I believe is happening here in this particular episode. What goes on here, he gives Rand the choice to basically live in his own utopia. Rand decides that no, it may be my choice, but it is no one else's, and everyone is their own person. He talks about Egwene's choice here, that she wouldn't choose this. And then he does the other thing Ishamael wants, which is basically attack him and break the seal. So either way, the dark wins at the end of the first season. This is not a victory for the light side in any way, shape, or form. A little bit different from the books. In the books, 2 Forsaken are dead at the end of the first book. They gain the Horn of Valir. They gain the Dragon Banner. There's a bunch of other things that happen there. It seems like a victory, and it seems really cool. Here, however, this is definitely a victory for the Shadow, bar none, at the end of the first season. All right, so now we're going to jump into talking about that last scene of the show. This last scene is where we see the Seanchan for the first time with little to no explanation for people who haven't read the books before, so they really don't know what's going on there. So I'm going to dive into who the Seanchan are, how they came to be, and why they're back and what they're doing. All right, so to talk about the Seanchan, we have to talk a little bit about history behind some things that happened in the book series. So, for those of you who don't know anything about the series, we're going to give you a little history lesson here. So, there was a gentleman by the name of Arthur Hawkwing. Now, this happened about 1,000 years before the book series actually started, so probably about 1,000 years before the show started. He was part of a small country called Shandal. Now, Shandal had a king and a queen, his mother and father, and they both died, leaving him in charge of the country. Now, it was a small country, and it was close to Tar Valon. However, he suffered a number of attacks from larger countries, which he believed the White Tower to be behind. So that started his hatred of Aes Sedai. So he started fighting and winning battles. And not only did he fight and win the battles, he continuously won them. And over the course of 20 years, he just kept fighting and winning. Now, he got the nickname Hawkwing because his armies were incredibly swift, faster than anyone else's armies at the time, and he could essentially get somewhere and win a battle before people even thought he could arrive. Now, all of this being said, what he did is he consolidated most of the continent under his rule. And that lasted, like I said, about 20 years. After the consolidation was done, there was 10 years of peaceful rule. Now, they said that you could basically take a sack of gold and walk from one ocean all the way to the spine of the world, and you wouldn't encounter any bandits. There was almost no crime. It wasn't quite a utopia, but it was far better than the current day in the books because it was under his rule and it was just and fair. Now, he did have some problems at Aes Sedai at the time, but he let them be. That was until about 10 years after the consolidation when a gentleman came to his court. Now, this gentleman's name was Jalwyn Morad. Now, Jalwyn was actually Ishamael. Now, Ishamael was, yes, he's trapped. However, there are cycles of release, so he would be able to interact with the world and do things every few years for a set period of time. Now, we'll get into that in a different video because there's quite a lot to unpack there. But essentially, Ishamael became his advisor and started whispering in his ear. Now, This was not a great thing because Ishamael basically wanted to destabilize everything. He wanted to tear down everything that Hawkwing created because basically the world was stable at this point, and if the Shadow decided to attack, well, Hawkwing would probably have been prepared for it. So he basically fanned the hatred of Aes Sedai. So at that point, Hawkwing didn't like them, but he didn't really have a huge problem with them. Under Ishamael's tutelage, he essentially put a bounty on every Aes Sedai's head that wouldn't forsake the White Tower. Then he laid siege to the White Tower. So it was a whole big mess, essentially, right up until his death. Now, he was advised for about 20 years by Ishamael, and the year before his death, he decided he would send his son, Luthair, across the Arth Ocean, with 300,000 soldiers and settlers. The idea was, if there were lands out there, they were going to settle those lands and basically take them over. Arthur wanted the entire world under his control, and that's why he sent his son and all of his descendants across the sea. Alright, so once Luthair came to this continent, he found a ton of different nations, and they're all kind of fighting each other, so he started pitting them against one another. Now, this was a long process called the Consolidation that lasted about 800 years. So it didn't happen quick, and it wasn't him who had finished it, it was his descendants, his children, his grandchildren, and so on and so forth. Now, during this time, he found Aes Sedai over there, or women who called themselves Aes Sedai, as well as other women who could channel. Now, one of these Aes Sedai in particular, Dianan Sedai, she came to him and basically started advising him. And not only did she start advising him, she came up with an ingenious way to control other channelers that opposed them. So if you were opposing the Seanchan Empire at the time, she created something called an Adam. Now, in the books, the Adam is a silvery leash and bracelet connected to a necklace. Now, this necklace would snap around someone's neck, and then the person wearing the bracelet could control them. So give them pain, give them pleasure, read their emotions, sort of a little bit like a water bond in some ways, but they would also have complete and utter control over their ability to channel the one power. So they could basically make them do whatever they wanted. Now, there were buffers in place, just like a sangreal or an angreal, where you could not draw too much of the one power, so they couldn't force themselves to, burn themselves out, but they could make them do all kinds of things that they wanted to against their will. Alright, so eventually it became not just women who opposed the Seanchan Empire who were evil and should be collared, but all women who could channel. So even the Aes Sedai who created the Adam that helped out, she was eventually collared, and we don't know a whole lot about her fate, although I can assure you it probably wasn't pleasant. So this gave rise to a few different classes of women who could channel. So you have the initial class, the Merith Damane. These are women who could channel who have not yet been collared. Now, these are used in tales to frighten Seanchan children. Basically, everyone in Seanchan is absolutely horrified at the idea of a Merith Damane, even the Merith Damane themselves. They believe that they should be collared. That's how far the brainwashing and the slavery goes. It's absolutely evil, but it makes for a really great bad guy in the books. Now, the second type of women who could channel in Seanchan are the Damane. Now, Damane are women who could channel who have been collared. These women are slaves. Essentially, they're seen as property, and they're viewed mostly as pets. So they can't have children, they don't have relationships, they don't have friendships. They can be given treats if they act the right way. They can be beaten or abused without any retribution whatsoever, because they're seen more as objects or pets and not actual things. Now we have a third class, and these are the Suldam. Suldam are women who can control the Adam. So these are the women that can wear the bracelet. These women control the Damane and make them do all sorts of different things. They can make them feel pain or pleasure. They can make them use one power for anything they want. But Seanchan's big secret, and this is a massive secret in the book series, is the fact that these Suldam can learn to channel. So you have Damane and Merith Damane who have the spark, they're born, they're going to channel whether they want to or not, and that can be tested for. However, women who can learn to channel, well, they don't really test for that, and unless they have someone guiding them and telling them what to do and showing them, they never really showcase the ability. So these women can learn to channel so they can wear the Adam, they can use it, they can control the Damane, but they don't actively use the one power themselves. So if that secret ever came out, the Seanchan Empire would basically crumble because it's all built upon these slaves, these Damane, and these Merith Damane, and how the whole culture feels about it. Now we're up to what's happening in the actual show. So we see these ships come across the ocean. The women in the front here are Damane, the women in the back are Suldam, and then the person off the left there you can see is a Seanchan soldier. In the books they're described as having bug-like armor, and they're pretty alien looking and really cool. Now, they come across and essentially we get to see them, so book readers knew who the Seanchan were, and we were pretty excited to see them on screen, but then they do this, and there was a lot of talk about why this happened. This is a giant wave coming in, hitting a small girl. Now, it didn't make much sense for some people, and I myself was a little confused the very first time that I saw it, but essentially, it's foreshadowing and a metaphor. So I had to watch it a couple times, and I really thought about it, and the wave is the Seanchan. The little girl in white is the White Tower, or all Aes Sedai, or all women who could channel on this continent. They're coming to wipe them out. Really cool foreshadowing, a really smart moment, and a really great way to end the season. This particular scene in episode 8, one of my absolute favorites, I would say, bar none, after I finally realized what it was. It took some thinking, but I got there, and I really thought it was cool. Now, I hope you folks enjoyed my explanation of the ending of episode 8 of season 1 of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show, and I hope I hit all the points properly, and I hope I didn't ramble too much. So let me know in the comments down below what you folks thought of the ending. How many times did you watch it? Did you have to think about it? Did it confuse you? For non-book readers, was this video helpful? Did it help you in the least bit at all? And for book readers, was it helpful too? I have no idea. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But let me know in the comments down below. Now, thank you so very much for sticking with me here to the very end. Here's to many more.